Engage quantum drive.
Katie has trivia.
I do. So at the beginning of this episode, this is where the Krill and the Planetary Union are watching a Broadway show called Annie. But as they're panning into the city, I was like, oh, that's New York City, because you can see the Manhattan Bridge in the opening sequence. And I'm not lying when I said I was researching and looking up bridges and being like, which one exactly is it? Because I'm from New York and I was like, I recognized the bridge, and I wanted to make that a fun fact because apparently the Manhattan Bridge is in the future as well. It's lasted a very long time.
Yeah, I probably went through some renovation, I'm sure, but
Just a few. I mean, I paused it on the screen. I looked at it quite a bit. It's lasted. They had some good construction on that bad boy, I guess.
bridges are good like that.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting, to see a future version of a city, like New York City. Like, that's what it would be, and I want to visit it. I want to go to a future city so bad.
Especially after this episode.
Yes. So the Broadway play that they take the Krill to see is Annie, which we just mentioned, where she ironically is singing the song Tomorrow, which has a line about how the sun will come out tomorrow. And the Krill famously can't be in the sun. It's not good for them. And the ambassadors at dinner call Annie's song haunting because it's very ominous that she's singing about how the sun's going to come out tomorrow.
I like that little tidbit that comes up. Yeah, that's nice.
It's a nice detail. The president quotes a poem in the shuttle on their way to Krill by saying, "Night falls fast, today is in the past," which is a direct quote from the poem entitled Not So Far as the Forest, written by Edna St. Vincent Millay. It was originally written in 1939, and I read the full poem because I was very curious about it.
As did I, actually.
Yeah. It features many metaphors of the coming winter, what happens to the trees, snow falling, and the inevitable. And then inevitably arrives on the part which talks about a bird being captured. So it felt like it was very fitting for the episode theme in general. And I know that you had kind of a thought on that as well.
Yeah, the atmosphere of Krill, they make specific mention of it being like 5 degrees above freezing, something along those lines. And that felt like a connection to the poem because it's like the onset of winter as they're passing through the atmosphere, like in the poem.
Yeah. And there is some analysis of poems, which I think are so interesting. It takes me back to college English. When you're looking for meaning in things. But it has strong metaphors of death and hopelessness. Which it seems like such an uplifting quote when he says it. But if you read the whole poem, there's a little bit more ominousness to it than just hey, winter's coming kind of thing.
You could even say the theme of the bird being captured is like a foreshadowing moment for the delegation being captured as well.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. It just, there's a lot of layers that they feature in the episodes, I've noticed, with quotes from things that kind of play into the main plot. And I really like that. But you wouldn't know that unless you did a deep dive like this.
Right. And you would think they would have to choose something thematic. Otherwise, why include that line at all,
Yeah. So I appreciate that just because looking up fun facts and things, you find little nuggets that you normally wouldn't have noticed if I didn't do this. So
right.
There's also the point in the episode where Ed tells a story to Leia about Ozymandias, an Egyptian king, and it's a sonnet written by Percy Bysshe Shelley. It's first published in 1818, and it said that the message of the sonnet is to convey that power is temporary, regardless of how prideful or tyrannical a leader may be, that life is short, and the futility that power, riches, control, fame, and glory do not last long. And it's essentially just I think an allegory to be there's so many things bigger than ourselves. And even if you have power, it's fleeting, which makes sense because Leia gets power in this episode. And I think he's trying to check her a little bit. And she's like, I agree with Ozymandias. So I just thought that was interesting. And I read this one as well. And so if you're curious about some of the background on the story that Ed told and the poem, I think they're worth a read. If you enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, for sure. The name Ozymandias for me always reminds me of the comic book Watchmen. because there's an incredibly prominent character in Watchmen also named Ozymandias, and it is not by accident that they give him that name. So I won't say anything more about it for anyone that hasn't read Watchmen, but I would highly recommend taking a look at that book too.
Was that character in the movie as well? Do you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I've seen the movie and I completely forgot. So that might be worth a rewatch at some point. There are quite a few guest stars in this episode. The first up being Lisa Baines, who played Senator Belask, and she did tragically pass away in 2021, so the episode is dedicated to her. But she's had a ton of work. Like, she's done so much over the years. She was in the movie Cocktail and Gone Girl, and then had recurring roles on The King of Queens, 6 Feet Under, just to name a few. And she had a guest role as a Trill doctor in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and the doctor's name was Dr. Renal.
Renal, yeah. It was the episode Equilibrium, in which Dax has some flashbacks to a host that she can't quite remember.
I love that there's so many people tied to Star Trek that end up in these shows, like in these episodes.
Same.
It's pretty cool to see when you go look at their resume of what they've done. You're like, hey, they've been in Star Trek. It's just kind of a fun little like Easter egg thing to find.
Totally.
Michaela McManus is back playing Talea, obviously. I was excited to see her in the opening sequence.
Oh, absolutely. Love Talea.
Yeah. So we became very familiar with her because she's been in several episodes, including Krill, Jaloja, and Nothing on Earth Excepting Fishes. And she's been in TV shows like You, which I realize she's in the newest season of You. I don't know if you've watched that on Netflix or not.
I have not, no.
And also she's from the Vampire Diaries and One Tree Hill. So I was just excited to see her in this episode.
Yeah, I know we talked about it before, but I know her best from One Tree Hill prior to this. She played Lindsay Strauss on that show.
I've never seen One Tree Hill.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I have those too. So
yeah.
Bruce Boxleitner, who played the president in this episode and went through some harrowing things throughout this episode.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So you may have seen him without special effects makeup in the TV show Supergirl, as well as in Babylon 5, where he played Captain John Sheridan. He was in How the West Was Won and the movie Tron, playing Alan Bradley. And he's done
the main character of Tron.
Yeah, and he's done a ton of voice work, and he's also a sci-fi and suspense writer.
Oh, I didn't know he was a writer, too.
Yeah, he's done a lot.
That's cool. Coincidentally, in Babylon 5, the character who starts off as a captain becomes a president. And in Supergirl, he played President Baker. So that seems to be an ongoing theme for him.
Sometimes you just got that president vibe, and you're just going to get... That's a fun thing to be typecast as. Like, you have president vibes, so we're going to make you the president.
Oh, yeah. He's got that gravitas to him.
Yeah. J. Paul Boehmer, who plays one of the Krill high priests in this episode, has been in past episodes, Blood of Patriots and Cupid's Dagger, but he's also been featured in other shows like The Young and the Restless, and has a few features in Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, I didn't know about Voyager.
Yeah, so I saw the Star Trek tie-in. I was like, I have to mention that.
Yeah. So
Charlie Townsend, who plays Anaya, Eden Talea's daughter, which I know we'll get into later, has quite a lot of work for someone of her age. She's 9 years old, and she's lended her voice to the show Muppet Babies, which I love Muppets, so I was excited about this, as the voice of Rosie Bear, and then has done another TV series called Tots, which is a show about birds who work as the only non-stork delivery birds in training, known as Tiny Ones Transport Service. If that's not the cutest thing.
Which is what TOTS stands for. Oh my goodness.
It was just adorable, and I had to mention that. So that's all the fun facts and the guest stars from this episode. Hey, thank you so much for watching. This is just a segment of the full podcast that Rob and I do. So if you want to hear more of our thoughts and full episode discussions, go to thegeekgeneration.com/quantum drive.